Hey everyone, welcome to the first one of
the Chuck Levin
an
Live.
episode of the Chuck Levin Live podcast. I am Sam.
I'm Zach.
And that's Zach, one of your hosts. Both your hosts?
Both the hosts.
I'm really just killing the intro.
Solid intro.
Yeah. Zach, you work at our front counter.
I do. I work the pedals and accessories.
Uh-huh.
You know, I make sure that everybody that's in the front lines of the store, you know, if you have any questions that pertain to like how do I complete my setup, I'm there for you.
Right on.
I'm here to help.
Yeah. Zach's been with us for a number of years. Always nice seeing his face up there.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just like, it's nice walking into a store and seeing like a legitimate, like, I don't mean this negatively, but just like a total dweeb about the gear. Like,
oh, yeah.
Right?
I love that stuff.
Like,
I mean, that's why
it.
I work there.
Yeah.
It's like to nerd out about all that stuff because it's something I'm passionate about, and I know a lot of people are passionate about it and want to just see either their gear ambitions or their musical ambitions, you know, see them through and really complete their setup, and I'm here to help.
Yeah, man. No, I think that's why pretty much all of us are here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's right. Yeah, we all have a passion for it, and we all care enough to help you. You know?
Yeah. Share the nerd knowledge.
Share the nerd knowledge.
Right?
That's solid.
So, I mean, full disclosure, I don't play guitar.
Sure.
But I'm going to do my best to tread water over here. Mm-hmm. But
oh, that's plenty fine. I mean, I work with a lot of people that are either brand new to guitar or like they've been playing for a while, but there's maybe an aspect of it they haven't entirely started looking into. Like pedals are always a venture in themselves, and some people they can put that stuff before like learning certain things, but it's all a journey at the end of the day.
That's the gist I've gotten too, is that there's I mean, I play drums, and there's drummers that are, there's more than one kind of drummer. But something I hadn't like considered is there's like, there's guitarists that are all about just like the one axe, one amp, and then just destroying like a stage with just those things. But there's our other musicians in the guitar world, and some of them are just like they're super just into shaping their signal path, right? Like
yeah.
The technical application might be simple, not necessarily easy, but simple, and then how that actually gets translated through their pedal board into the room is like that's the juice.
Exactly.
For those guys, right?
To each his own. It's like it's something as personal as like the kind of sticks you use for your kit. I play drums as well, so I understand from that aspect. I understand it everything down to like the size of your snare drum. Could be like the type of overdrive you like. It's just how you cater towards what you're using. So like if I'm using like a big John Bonham kit, I'm gonna want to use a Superphonic to kind of like complement how big my drums sound. Whereas if I'm using a little Blues Junior, I can kind of juice the Blues Junior to get a little bit of hair out of it. But if I'm playing a smaller place and I've got like, say, a deluxe that's like twice the wattage, I'm going to have to use something to kind of compensate for that. So it's just kind of catering towards, I mean, I've heard some of my favorite tones that I've heard from a guitar are guitar into amp and guitar into what I call a space station.
A space station.
A space station. Tons of pedals, tons of effects. It's just, teach his own. And some people use that stuff to their advantage, and some people they don't need all that. They just really want to focus on the song.
Right.
But sometimes you have bands that are like a three-piece, like the Hendrix Experience, where you have one guy who's just kind of just letting go. Just Jimi Hendrix is just ripping, but he has all these effects to kind of complement that and express himself through it. And then you may have like a 5 to 6 piece band where you have a keyboardist, you have another guitarist. So what you're doing as a rhythm player or a lead player is really just you hit your number and then you kind of pull back. And you don't need a ton for that.
Sure.
Or in some cases you do need a ton for that. I mean, there's tons of bands where, you might have a smaller setup with nothing, or you could have a bigger setup with everybody just decked out in gear. Teach his own. You cater to the song. I find I was working in a music venue for a little bit called Madam's Organ, and I found that a lot of the bands, if they're covering a heavy load of material that has a lot of like really recognizable sounds, like your chorusing, your delays, they're going to have a pretty hefty board. But if you're just doing pretty much blues standards, that stuff is just guitar and amp and like the old phalanges.
Yeah, and so I play in a wedding cover band, and that was also another like kind of avenue I thought of where, you know, if you're trying to cover a huge spectrum of sound, and some of those sounds can be general, but other like there's going to be a lot of those hits that are the guitar sound is almost defined as much by the guitar itself as it is like, you know, a handful of effects, and it could be even as granular as like literally make and model. This is what you need to like duplicate that record, right? Exactly. I mean, songs that come to mind are like Walking on the Moon, The Police. You have to have a chorus and some sort of digital delay to make that big atmospheric sound. Machine Gun, Jimi Hendrix. That's a univibe. You want to make sure to have that undulating, like throbbing feel to the song, because what they're conveying with those effects is emotion, space, a feeling, and that stuff, it hits different is the best way to say it, because you can play those songs without the effects and people will understand them, but when they hear the effects, there's just something that your brain does where it's just like, oh, that's the Police, or oh, that's Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, it's just easily recognizable. And I think my favorite thing about all these effects is like making it translate to your own music, making it translate to your own sound, and how am I expressing myself through this? Yeah, man. So you mentioned that, like, you know, you get a lot of musicians in who are in, you know, one way, shape, or another, they're like kind of just starting on what you call like their effects journey. I know that can look different depending on who's coming in, whether it's someone who's literally knew the instrument or someone who's played for a while but maybe just has like, you know, your classic, you know, tuner overdrive and like maybe a wah or something, right? They don't really necessarily have like a board. What is something that you like when they kind of come in? Are you asking, are you kind of trying to determine like, do they already have a breadth of sounds they're looking for, or do you like establish this, like, you know, okay, what does your current path look like? Like, does the amp they're gonna run things through, does that matter to you? Does the guitar itself like matter to you also? Like, does that influence like what you're going to be kind of like throwing at them?
I factor in all those. Like one of the biggest things that I get asked is when it comes to effects, a lot of people just want to get something to try it. Like they don't know exactly what they want and they don't know exactly what to gravitate towards, but they know they don't want to gravitate towards a multi-effect, because a multi-effect is something that you have to sit and learn. Right. It's not like plugging in a DS1 and then, look, I'm Kurt Cobain. It's like you have to sit there and like learn all the facets, and every multi-effect is a little different. So it can be overwhelming for someone just getting into effects. What I do to kind of boil it down is like, what are you playing? Like what kind of music and what kind of effects are you going for? Like a lot of the time somebody's intro effect is going to be some sort of reverb or delay. Okay. Because it's fun. Yeah. It's fun to have that space and have something to play with that you can keep growing from. Like we get a lot of people that come in and ask for like overdrives and stuff, and I love overdrives. You know, it's cool to cater that, but that is a very niche thing. Sure. Like, that is something that you should really think about beforehand and know what you're looking for specifically, because there's a lot of flavors of overdrive. It's like going into McDonald's and asking for a burger. Like, they're gonna ask you what kind of burger you want, and you're like, no, I just want a burger. And it's like, well, what kind of burger? Yeah, dude, you know? We have like 40 burgers. Yeah, like, exactly. I mean, there's 11 different versions of the Tube Screamer at this point. Like, you just have to know exactly what type. But even then, like, some of them are very niche, and some of them only work with certain amps or certain sounds or certain styles. Like, some of them only cater towards humbuckers very well. Some of them are single coil. Like, all that stuff is played into factor. So what I try to do is I give them like some very neutral zones. So like my answer for like a good overdrive is like, what are you running right now? Like start with the amp and start with the guitar. Yeah. That can kind of tell you what kind of person they are and what kind of music they're playing. And you can kind of gauge it from there. Some people, what they want is just the sound of their amp breaking up. But they don't necessarily need all the crazy things that entail like a pretty high gain overdrive. They just want a little bit of hair or a little bit of sustain, so they feel like their sound is more full. Yeah. So what I suggest for stuff like that is usually a Blues Driver or the Nobles, the ODR1. Yeah, right. Those are very solid overdrives, and they both are very different. Your classic Tube Screamer is usually what people gravitate towards, What the Nobles does is it gives you two different versions of the Tube Screamer. Your TS9, which has a bass cut, and then your TS808, which is a more favorable Tube Screamer because it doesn't have the bass cut. It's just like a full-blown, like you still have the bassy, rich sound of your guitar, and it kind of just gives a little bit of hair. Mm-hmm. The Blues Driver, on the other hand, is kind of the polar opposite. It's not really a natural-sounding overdrive, but there's so much versatility. Like, a lot of people will buy it, and they'll have like a different use for it every time they break it out. Right. Whether it be a clean boost, because it is a very solid, clean platform, whether they just want a little bit of hair on their sound. And the Blues Driver goes all the way into full-blown fuzz.
Sure.
Which I love, because you give somebody that, they have three different sounds they can kind of cater and mold. And depending on their amp, depending on their guitar, they can play with that for days, for months, for years. Because you're always learning from it.
Yeah.
There's always something different that you can get out of it.
Yeah, it's like a deeper experience. It's not just like a binary, it's on, it's off, at a specific setting I like it at. You can tweak that to fit, whether it's a style you're trying to emulate or just, I got a new guitar. Mm-hmm. Let me make the Blues Driver, mold that to this new instrument.
Exactly, right. Exactly. Sometimes what I'll see when I was working at Madam's is people bring, if there's a house amp or if there's an amp that they're going into that they're not exactly familiar with, mm-hmm. They might want to get a very familiar feel that they're used to. So they'll bring their favorite overdrive and use that as kind of the feel center. Because for some of these amps, depending on the wattage, you're going to have to crank it pretty loud before you start getting some of that, like, that sag and some of that, like, sponginess mm-hmm. out of the amp. And that gets painful.
Right.
That gets painful before it starts getting nice sounding. So sticking an overdrive in there kind of gives you that little bit of leeway to be like, I can sculpt this sound at whatever volume I need, but still have the breakup or the hair or the headroom, whatever you need. And that those are kind of really nice utility pieces. Some people use overdrives as an always-on thing, and that's another thing to factor. Is it like, do I want to shape the way that my sound is coming in? Or do I just want to have this as a little accent? The cool thing about the Blues Driver is that you can kind of set it and then, like, say a song changes and you go from like kind of a slight crunch, but you need like a heavier sound for the next song. You can dime that Blues Driver and just have the same level, but even more of a fatter, more aggressive sound, all from the same pedal. Right. You know, it's a little more versatile in that sense, but some people just need to kind of color whatever they're using, which is where the Nobles kind of fits in.
Yeah, right. And the Nobles too, like they are a little. There's like you were mentioning how they are like in. They're in the like the realm of tube screamers, but they don't exactly. They're not like mimicking. That pedal, right? Like a.
It's not. It's like a refined circuit. Okay. A lot of these pedals, a lot of these companies, what they're doing is they're taking pre-existing circuits and kind of either making the best of. Example being like the Moxie, which is like a version of the tube screamer that was a TS10 that John Mayer really liked. So what I think it's a Wampler effect. What Wampler ended up doing was. Just kind of making it more accessible to people. Like that's kind of an older pedal and it has a very specific sound and it may not work for all rigs. So what he did was he kind of brought it into the realm of reality to where anybody can get more of a John Mayer style overdrive sound in a more convenient package because it's kind of a little mini pedal.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Little teeny tiny guy.
Yeah, a little teeny tiny guy.
Well, cool. Yeah, thanks for sitting down with us, Zach. I'm really curious. So, I mean, obviously, this is probably going to change a lot if you're really into this kind of thing. But do you have like a core that is like constant on your pedal board, or do you just do the whole? I have to have a Univibe. You just have the whole clean sheet every couple months, or like?
I always go through it. I mean, I work the pedal counter, and like I've had so many phases of pedals in my life. When I started guitar initially, I was not the best player, and I kind of masked it a lot with pedals. And then as you get better and better, you kind of are like, I don't need this or I need this. And it's so funny to go back to some of the first effects that I started with. And, you know, like my first pedal I ever bought was a DS1 from Chuck Levin's when I was 13.
I was going to say, I opened this up with saying I don't play guitar. I do own a guitar. And I was very pleased to find out that, my first pedal was a DS1. Yeah. And it didn't stay in use very long. But then I found out that what you mentioned the other use for is like you can still have it on your board and just use it as like a boost or something like that. You don't. The
dude from Crunbin uses a DS1. The dude from freaking Crunbin
everybody
who has like the most clean, like pristine sound, uses a DS1 on his board.
Yeah, that's what made, like when I found that, I was like, oh wow, and I just went a little further. It's like, oh wow, there are a boatload of people that they just use the DS1 as their little boost, right?
Yeah, man. Like all these pedals have like a secondary usage, in my opinion, and the better that you get and the more your ear kind of refines, the more you find those secondary uses. And you may find that like some pedal that you bought on a whim that you didn't exactly like in the moment may come and turn around and end up being a new idea for a new song.
Yeah.
You know? And all that stuff is just in pursuit of creativity.
Yeah, man. So I derailed you a little bit when when you brought the DS1. So is there another like core pedal that's on your board?
I always have to have Univibe, and I really like chorus. Like chorus modulation is kind of my favorite because I like the constant movement. Constant movement kind of keeps me in time and keeps me playing, you know, in sync with the music. If you're kind of revolving around the timing of your own pedal. I was watching a rig rundown with the War on Drugs recently, and the guy that is in the War on Drugs actually has a tremolo pedal that is hard synced to everybody's in-ears.
Oh, cool.
And that's actually how they clock all their songs.
Oh, they use the trem as their
the BPM.
Yeah, as their like metronome essentially.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wild.
Like that he's sitting there tapping out each song for everybody.
Cool.
That's so cool to see. I mean, what a band leader.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Well, it's neat too because like something like that, it like inherently would encourage like a more organic sense of time as opposed to like a highly like precise gridded type of thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And kind of stuff like that where it's like it's always in the moment. Ties back to like Jerry Garcia and why Jerry Garcia had so many mods on his guitar. It's because he's like, I'm going to play the same songs each night. We're the Grateful Dead, but I don't want them to sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into effects too, where it's like you may have a pedal like a Shallow Water, and I love the Shallow Water. But my thing with the Shallow Water is like every time I feel like every time I turn that pedal on, it sounds a little bit different, which is kind of nice, honestly. Yeah. Like, especially for a creative aspect, it's nice to have those little deviants that make something sound special each time you kick it on.
Yeah, that's what that keeps the fire alive, makes it exciting.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, what am I going to get today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks for sitting down with us, man.
Of course. Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We'll have to do this again. And I'll do a little more homework so I can talk about knobs and settings.
That's right.
We'll be back next week or something.